Good afternoon. This is the Average American Coalition, and I'm Dr. Mark Carter Pierce, the founder. Welcome to At the Chair, episode number 2. Today, what we want to talk about is there's like a division going on right now. We have, of course, we know about the Democratic Party, and we have the Republican Party. But right now, there's a division in the Republican Party, which is actually kind of good for us. But there are two interchangeable terms that have gone along with Republicans for a certain amount of time. So today we want to clear that up and talk about the differences between Republicans and conservatives. So let's talk about Republicans first. Now, most people understand that Republicans come from, the Republican Party was, according to the GOP, which stands for Grand Old Party, the Republicans were the first political party in the United States. Amen. For example, George Washington was a Republican because at the time the United States was known as a republic. So the politicians that represented the republic were Republicans. And the thing about it is, up until the days of Lincoln, the Republican Party had been kind of a progressive party. They represented the people of the North. It is factually true. It is factually true that Lincoln did free the slaves and he was a Republican. It also is factually true that the Democrats of the time, or what they used to call the Dixiecrats, the Southern slave owners, they were Democrats and they did protest slavery. These are facts. It is true. But the next time one of your Republican friends wants to throw in your face that Republicans were against slavery, you might want to remind them about a certain thing that took place called a party shift. Okay? And here's a good way to prove that. In 1964, you had two politicians. You had Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was a Southern Democrat, and you had Barry Goldwater, who was a Western Republican. It was LBJ who took the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and walked that through Congress and got it passed. It was Barry Goldwater, the Republican, who fought against the Civil Rights Act. And continuing on from that point forward, even up until the days of Reaganomics, the Republican Party has been against civil rights, regardless of what they said. Let their actions speak for themselves. So what is a conservative, you might ask? Well, a lot of Republicans call themselves conservatives, but what is a conservative, you might ask? Well, a conservative is an individual who seeks to maintain American family values. The problem is, what are American family values? What particularly are American family values? Well, basically, for the Republican Party, American family values are what you saw portrayed in the Donna Reed show, Father Knows Best, the Brady Bunch. Let me just give you a little taste of that. And by the way, this is what Donald Trump is also about, and we're going to get into Trumpism in this too. So, Republican American family values were where white men controlled everything. White men had good jobs. White men went to work every day. They had good jobs. They wore suits and ties. They drove cars. They went to offices. White women did not work. They stayed home and their husbands took care of them. White women did not vote. They did not have a voice. Their voice was to be barefoot and pregnant and take care of the kids, make sure the house is clean, so when the husband comes home, he can come into his castle because he's the one that bought it. As far as people of color was concerned, well, Lincoln did free the slaves, so they did have a place. See, the problem was that when Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, There was no mechanism set up for the former slaves to not only partake in some of that generational wealth that their white counterparts had, but there also wasn't an apparatus in place for them to be trained and put into positions where they could enjoy the American dream like the average Caucasian could. So what were people of color doing while the white men were going to work in banks and advertising, executive jobs and offices? Well, your African Americans, they were porters. They carried baggage and cleaned out the train cars. They operated your elevator. They worked in your washroom where you would tip them a whole brand new nickel. Yeah. Chinese people were a little bit different. They formed restaurants. They had businesses, and then they would have their laundromats. You remember the old joke, no tiki, no shirty. Remember? This was the conservative dream. I always asked, what are you trying to conserve? And I realized this is what you're trying to conserve. You're trying to conserve the America of the 1950s. You're trying to conserve an America that was bigoted and racist and sexist. But you know what you didn't realize? What you didn't realize is that there is one constant in the universe. And that constant, my friends, is change. Change is the one constant in the universe. We are here in the 21st century. My God, when conservatism, the values of conservatism did not know anything about PlayStations, plasma TVs, pagers, cell phones, the World Wide Web, Pornhub. They had no way of taking any of those things into consideration. So I want to see the first conservative throw away their iPhone, get rid of their plasma TV, get rid of their fuel-injected car, totally disconnect from the web. And how's that going to work at the job? Are you going to become Quakers? You know, the Amish in Pennsylvania were the best examples of conservatism. And even they got hooked up on crack. Yeah, it's a damn shame. It happened about 20 years ago. But even they got hooked up on crack. The one constant in the universe is change. Just like when in the very beginning, this land was inhabited by indigenous people. And people from Europe came here. You know, the Nordic came here before Amerigo Vespucci got here. And then Amerigo Vespucci got here. He's the one who actually mapped and found this place and named it. Not that drunken Christopher Columbus who shipwrecked the Santa Maria and then tried to enslave the inhabitants of Hispaniola, which is now the Dominican Republic and Haiti. You know, it wasn't that guy. Even though we were lied to about that, but that's a story for another episode. Yeah. So, what's the difference between a Republican and a conservative? Well, things have changed. Because the Republican Party has kind of morphed into this weird thing, and especially since the coming of Donald Trump. Ah, yes, good old-fashioned Lord Orange himself, the tyrant that wanted to be. Yes, when he came, he let loose the hedonistic side. He said, hey, guess what? We're getting paid. We have money. We're becoming wealthy. We can do what we want, and nobody can stop us. We can usurp the government. So what? Listen. We don't have to wait till they're 18 to marry them, right, Judge Roy Moore? No, we don't have to do that. Hey, if we want to molest little boys, we can do that, and people will turn their backs on it, right, Jim Jordan? Huh? Or we can, now that we have this technology that we're not going to get rid of, to be a conservative, what we're going to do is we're going to try to make it easy to buy sex with underage girls, and we'll use Venmo to do it. Yay! See, Trumpism has infected the Republican Party. Oh, how we long for the progressive Republican Party of the 50s. See, there were some things that were good that should be conserved. In the 1950s, the Republican Party was actually progressive. They brought you Social Security. They brought you Medicare. They brought you welfare. They brought you unemployment insurance. They wanted everybody to have a level playing field. But then things changed when civil rights came into play. They wanted to hold on to a position that they could not hold on to. Just like the Irish and all of the immigrants, yes, I said that word, immigrants, came here in the 18 and 1900s looking to find a way to do better for themselves and their families. Well, did you think it was going to end there? Okay? You even kidnapped a whole race and brought them here as slaves. And once you freed them, you didn't offer them a ride back. You kept them here. And you didn't train them. And you didn't help them. They had to fend for themselves. But that's okay, because guess what? A whole new group came in after that. The Mexicans, well, we stole some of their land too, because they were here first. But then came the Jamaicans, and the Haitians, and the Russians. Yeah, and the Dominicans. Yeah, and the South Americans, the Peruvians. I went to high school in the 70s in North Newark, New Jersey. It wasn't Puerto Ricans that were there. It was mostly Portuguese. Portuguese. Few Italians, few Irish, lots of Portuguese. Yeah. Well, now they're the new Irish and Italian immigrants. So you decided enough was enough and you figured you just blocked them out. Didn't happen. Because that inevitability came, and it was called change. And here they are. So what are you going to conserve now? Because the bottom line is you can't go back. The barn door has been left open. The cows have left. You can't go home anymore. And despite what Donald Trump tells you when he says America first and he's going to make America great again, he's only got 1/3 of you fooled. Because the rest of us already know and accept that change is inevitable, and to grow you got to get with it. We welcome change. The average American welcomes change. And you know why we welcome change, conservatives? Because we've been getting the low end of the stick thanks to a lot of you guys already. And we're ready to rise up. And the change is inevitable, that we can't stay at the bottom forever. That you will not hold us to a minimum wage anymore, where you will continue to keep us from unionizing. Times are changing. You can only get so wealthy and then no more. Then it becomes obscene. And for about 15 people in this country, wealth has become obscene. The Walton family, Bezos, Elon Musk. Wealth has become obscene for you. Now it's time for you to pay your fair share. You want to be conservatives? Instead of being conservatives, be preservatives. Preserve the peace of this land. Preserve the Constitution and what it says. Be a preservative, not a conservative. Conservatism, you're talking about holding on to something that is never coming back. You can forget white supremacy. You're not going to make women stay home barefoot and pregnant anymore. You're not going to reign over them. You're surely not going to get away with getting paid more to do the same work that she does. Those days are over. And unfortunately, there's a few things that you're going to have to accept. Because people like Matt Gaetz, Roy Moore, Donald Trump, they've actually kind of already accepted it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, they've already accepted it. They don't make a public thing about it, but they have accepted it. That there are trans people out there, that there are homosexuals out there. And they pay taxes too. And you better get used to it. Change is inevitable. The Republican Party of the 1950s would not have dared to doubt a presidential election. Yet right now in Arizona, we have a bunch of numbnuts looking at ballots to see if they've been passed, if they have particles of bamboo on them. I mean, who did the election down there? Pandas? Let's just knock it off. Don't be a conservative, be a preservative. Preserve the Constitution. Preserve civil rights. Preserve the integrity of this country, not its old-fashioned, played-out standards. That's what you want to do. And if you're a Republican, you need to make a choice. Do you want to be a preservative, or do you want to be a Trump? Because the ways of Trump is dividing your party and it's imploding from the inside. I don't care how much you divide it, but it is happening right now. Trump has as much business being in charge of your party. You would do better off getting a seal from Ringling Brothers Circus. And that seal would probably have more experience in governance than this orange fossil that you have now. He's a liar and the truth is not in him. And he's going to destroy your party with his own special brand of selfish ignorance. Don't be a conservative, be a preservative. And if you're going to be a preservative, don't be a Trump Republican. Be a progressive Republican. Get on board. If you want to move forward, you got to leave the past behind and get to the future. And that's the facts. Thank you for spending your time with us. I am Dr. Mark Carter Pierce, the founder of the Average American Coalition, and this has been At the Chair. See you next week.